And I say that sincerely. It was a new process to do these, and I think a break was good, but it's definitely something that I've missed as a big part to my week. So we're excited to get going this week, and we have a great guest and share a little bit of information on a couple of different topics. So with that, Les, I'll ask that you go ahead and start us off with a prayer.
Thank you, Michael. Let us pray. Father, we are blessed. We are blessed with this day and this opportunity to serve you and this community that we live in. Father, we thank you for our family and friends. For those that join us today, Lord, we ask you to protect those that are keeping those safe, to protect those that are on the front lines of dealing with COVID-19. And we also pray, Father, that you would give us direction to see the opportunities in front of us and to better serve the community that we live in. And all this we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Oops, sorry. Can everybody hear me? Apologize.
Yes.
I had muted myself during the prayer. All right, wanted to cover a couple of updates and then get to our guest this morning. I did send out an email on Friday about some of the COVID-19 guidelines. Obviously on C1 Rose are our general company-wide protocols, and all updates will be posted there. What I sent out on Friday, I think was a little more just trying to be almost like a responsibility code. Remember that we've got a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to each other and to our greater community. And that really hits home when you talk to someone who maybe have a loved one or a parent or somebody who's certainly high risk and is doing and taking every step they can to protect themselves. So I tried to rate it in pretty common sense language, but basically if you have been exposed to someone who has tested positive to COVID-19, or you are not feeling well, or you think you have tested well, you think you have been exposed, or you have taken a test and you are waiting the results, then in that situation, we would ask that you isolate yourself, that you not go to the office, and that you don't do any of the activity associated with real estate. Don't show property, don't go on a showing appointment, don't go on a home inspection, don't go to a closing, because again, if you're waiting test results, then and you don't feel well, then you may be exposing someone else. And so we know that we're not going to be able to stop anyone from ever getting this. And we've got a great responsive plan if someone in the office or someone people have been exposed to does test positive. And we've done, I think, a great job with contact tracing and with temperature checks as you enter into the office. But we also have a level of personal responsibility. And, this morning, my, nephew's roommate, several people at his place of employment have tested positive. The roommate has been tested. They're in close quarters. My nephew's staying home from work today till his roommate's test comes back because he doesn't want to go expose his workplace if his roommate's workplace, has been exposed. So we just got to take those common sense steps to protect those around us, especially if we're not feeling well, and especially if we're waiting on a test. Because again, if we're waiting on a test, there was a reason to believe that we needed a test. So just got to make smart decisions about that. Same as we've got our responsible open house guidelines. We hear a lot of people are having activity at open houses, which is great. But as was brought up on our call this morning with the management team, we want to make sure we're safe, smart, and responsible, but also that the consumer knows we're safe, smart, and responsible. So we've got responsible open house riders available in the office and to follow those guidelines. That means one person touring through the house at a time. I think somebody's going to understand that they may need to wait a little bit for the safety of the people inside and the safety of the homeowner. I hope you have the biggest open house crowds ever, but people can wait in their cars. And if it's that great, then you can say, great, give me your number and I'll text you in 2 seconds when I'm done with the people I'm showing the house to currently. So, just make sure we're smart about the steps we're taking and responsible, and that we do what we can to limit the spread of COVID-19. Lastly, we've put up some signs in the offices to make sure that everyone not only is being smart, but is also respecting individual rights and how, people feel different about certain precautions, but there are certain things that make sense for everybody. So make sure you maintain your physical distancing, make sure you check your temperature and sign the log as you enter an office. We recommend the use of masks in common areas. If you're in your office working on your computer, that's fine. But, if you're down in the mix of others, recommend use of masks in common areas. We had an agent who I spoke with yesterday at length, who actually got a listing in part because of how serious she was taking the precautions for showings, what she was requiring of people on showings, the wearing of masks. And this was a significant listing in a great part of town. And her showing the seller that she was serious, that we were serious as a company, that it wasn't just back to business as usual, was certainly a big factor in her getting that listing. I think she may have sold herself short because she's a superstar as well, but that does play a part. And so, let's all be smart everywhere I can. Craig said, or if you have a cough, absolutely. If you're not feeling well, it's better to stay home until you feel better than to take the chance of doing that. Okay, so if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to call Dave, and he'll answer them all for you. Looking a little bit about the market, last week hit a new record in our market, all time for pending contracts at 539 properties under contract. The prior week was 525, and this marks the 6th consecutive week of pending records in written contracts. Just for perspective, the prior high point I think was about 450. So we've seen some really, really strong activity. Year to date, we are up 3.2% in ratified contracts in the market, which if you told me that in mid-March when the world was ending, I would have taken that bet all day long. So obviously closings are down. We hit a low point of closings in May. We'll have increased closings in June, and it looks like really, really increased closings in July. And I think by the end of the summer, although we've got challenges ahead, by the end of the summer, we'll certainly probably see written or closed contracts surpass last year. And remember, last year was one of the best years in our market ever. So that's pretty strong. Median sales price for contracts out there was $350,000. So for our market, that's actually above the market-wide average. So prices are still holding up strong. And there were actually 9 properties over $2 million that went under contract last week, and 13 properties on the Isle of Palms in the beach market. So, we also had on our call this morning with the leadership team, talk with Kim from Carolina One Mortgage about the return of the jumbo loan market. So we're definitely seeing some more movement in the high end, although inventory, especially sub 500 in some places and sub 300 in others, is still critically low. So listings are certainly the name of the game, and the leverage that we have over any other brokerage, whether that be with the Facebook page, with InstaList, with sharing at your offices, is critical, because we've all got buyers looking for that inventory that we know is going to fly off the shelf. And we certainly want someone to help us when we need that. So when we got something coming on, giving your fellow agents a heads up is certainly valuable. And again, a reminder that no one else can do that now that the clear cooperation policy is in effect. So it gives us a unique advantage. Last kind of housekeeping item. Week 5 starts Thursday morning for the activity contest. So I think everybody gets points for participating in a town hall or participating in a training. So make sure you do that. And again, the activity contest is really focused on those activities, remember on the Larry Kendall town hall, that will build your business and lead to long-term success. Again, expressing those gratitudes which now reminds me that I skipped right over the gratitude section of our morning after we had our prayer. So I will take one brief skip before I start getting hate mail, and go back that if you have a gratitude you want to put in the chat box, by all means. You would think, since it's written down on the piece of paper right after prayer, that I would be able to remember that. Go ahead and enter those. Sorry, we can't unmute everybody. That would be chaos. Personally, I'm grateful for, again, I kind of put them in two buckets. One, the less serious. I'm grateful for the return of summer camp. My kids last week were in, one was in a Nerf summer camp and one was in karate. And this week, Leo is at Dill Sanctuary on James Island, and enjoying some time outdoors. So I'm very grateful for the return of summer camp season. And then on the more serious side, a member of our extended Carolina One family had some health issues and a health scare, and had a procedure recently, and that went very well. And he or she is doing very well. And that's the ultimate gratitude. And so certainly grateful that he or she is doing so well on his or her recovery. And so hopefully he or she knows who he or she is. Again, going back to, before we get to our guest, on the activity contest, John Brewer's got TSW, This Stuff Works, on the training room wall, and there are lots of stories of agents that have participated in the activity contest that have seen great results. An agent, who felt like making calls, and John talked about this on the Java with John's Monday morning, that calling people in their center of influence was really outside their comfort zone. And I think they talked to the broker, said, how about call 5? Let's just take a chance. Call 5 members of your center of influence. Again, you're not calling to sell them Amway. You're calling to check in personally to see how they're doing. Real estate isn't even why you're calling. You're just calling to see how they're doing, what's going on in their lives. Well, guess what? One of them said, I found a house I want to buy. And I don't really know an agent besides you, so I'd like you to write that contract. So I don't expect everybody to hang up right now and go make 5 calls because there's a buyer out there. But if we're in flow with our sphere, then, there is business out there. We had another agent that got a listing and a potential buyer referral from a personal note that they sent and got a response to. We had another agent who sent a personal note to another agent he knows out of state and got 2 incoming referrals from it. So this stuff does work. The waking up in the morning and expressing gratitude and focusing on your day before the first thing you do is pick up your phone and email and get hijacked by someone else's day, as well as the writing personal notes, as well as doing the activities that lead to ongoing business, really will build the foundation for a successful business. And we've seen the results on an ongoing basis. So I would continue to recommend that you continue to participate in the activity contest and join week 5, which starts Thursday morning. All right, so now while you guys are here, certainly not to hear me, but Stefan, that gives us a little while longer because I think now we got about 275. So that's about what we were hoping up to get close to that 300 number. So that's a great crowd. I want to, not by way of too long of an introduction, although Stefan does have a Wikipedia page, which I think makes him one of the more important people I know, because I don't know what the criteria are to have a Wikipedia page, but I thought that was kind of cool. Stefan Swanepoel was born in Nairobi, Kenya, which alone we could probably talk about for the rest of our time, because I can only imagine the interesting perspectives that you have. And he holds a bachelor's degree in science from the University of Pretoria, a master's degree in business economics from University of Johannesburg, and diplomas in arbitration, mergers and acquisitions, real estate, computer science, and marketing. So I think simply by education, he'd be qualified to join us. But, separate from education, his professional background, he's really recognized as a global leader and real estate expert, and his trends report, whether it's his annual trends report, and we're going to talk a little bit about the danger report that he wrote a few years ago, and their analysis really do a great job that I think was really lacking in the industry of really digging into a lot of the aspects of the real estate industry that not only establish some of the baseline things that we do, but also addressed and put in perspective a lot of the accelerated pace of change that the industry has gone through in the last 10 to 12 years, and really helped slow things down a little bit and examine those and put them, I think, in understandable context. And that trends report is something that I certainly look forward to reading every year. So Stefan, besides my introduction on the bio side, why don't you give our agents a little bit of introduction to you, to T360, your company, and kind of what you all see as your mission in the real estate industry.
Morning, Michael. Morning, Carolina One. I've been looking at all of the notes coming in and everybody who's grateful for all the wonderful things. You clearly have a very tight-knit family, so you make me jealous. Well done. It's cool to be part of a group of people that as a collective actually love each other. It's super awesome. So you're very lucky to have what you have created, and hold on to that. It's very special.
We are lucky. Thank you.
I am heart and soul in the real estate industry. So although I have engineering background, I entered the industry at a fairly young age by choice, at the age of 25. And I have run a realtor association as CEO. I've run an MLS as a CEO. I've run 3 different brokerage companies as a CEO, and I've run a global franchise in real estate as a CEO. My smallest real estate company had about 600 people. My biggest one was 26,000. So have been in the space my entire life. It's what I like. It's what I do. It's what I love. It's where I will die one day. So this is my space. But about 25 years ago, I was very frustrated that there is a lack of information in our industry about ourselves, about the industry, about the structure, the size of companies, how we function. And you hear many brokerages, you hear the media, you hear agents often quote numbers, which when you try and do a little bit of homework, you find out that those numbers have very little merit. and they were just grabbed from anywhere, maybe on the spur of the moment, or we read them in the media and we assumed that because they were printed in a newspaper, they are accurate. And we don't believe everything we hear about COVID or the president or the riots. So why would we believe everything we hear about real estate? There are lots of things published about real estate that are not actually factually correct. So 25 years ago, I started a research company that focuses on analyzing the real estate market. You would not expect me to come to Charlotte and within one day become an expert of real estate and know what's happening in Charlotte. So I wouldn't expect you to know everything that's happening about real estate on a nationwide basis in every town, in every zip code, in every company, and every profitability, and every public company, and all the shares, and all the decisions and all the strategies, because you're working with buyers and sellers. So what we do is we don't buy and sell. We're not a realtor company. We haven't been ever as this organization. And T3 is basically the industry's, dare I say, lighthouse, research engine, analyst. We look at every single thing that we can find in this industry, whether it's profitability, if it's commissions, if it's iBuyer, if it's NAR, if it's Realogy, if it's Open Door, if it's Compass, if it's going public, if it's delisting, if it's an acquisition. We'll look at every model, every strategy, every concept, and then we will go spend weeks and weeks or hours and hours to go and get sort of the backstory, the real story, make sure that it is truthful, accurate, as far as you can humanly find out. Now, we know that brokerage companies are generally speaking private, and therefore they don't share all information. And we understand that a lot of information is confidential. But the longer you are in the industry, the more you've done that. And I've written 52 books. Now, that's not a number to brag about. It's just, I want to tell you, it's one every 6 months for the last 25 years. And every single one of those was about what you and I, Michael, care about, what we're passionate about, real estate. How does Realogy work? How does Keller Williams work? Why is iBuyer different? How does EXP or virtual real estate work? Why did NAR do this? Why do MLSs consolidate? To try and figure out, if we understand a little bit better where we are today and where we've come from, what is the likelihood that we can somewhat predict tomorrow? I know nobody can predict tomorrow. We have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, and anything is possible. But many things that happen in life, if the highway or the freeway is full of cars, you can, with a fair amount of certainty, predict that it's going to take a longer time to get to work. If you go outside and it's raining and you don't have an umbrella, there's a fairly high good chance you're going to get wet. I mean, so some things are reasonably obvious, and that's what we do. And as we pick different topics, we try and pick the topics at any given time that we think are the most important, and we try to be objective. We don't accept pay to play. You cannot buy us to write about you, and we will not write about one company because we think they're nicer or better or we like them more or they asked us. We write about what we think at this point in time is on the hearts and minds of most of the realtors. And we do tend to focus a little bit more on management. So we do really write, Michael, maybe more for you than we do for, I don't know, Gail or Les or Christina or Dave or John or somebody else. That doesn't mean that they can't read it. Of course they can, and it's very interesting. They'll like it. But we do tend to focus a little bit more on the business, management, leadership, executive, high-level decision side of the business. A mouthful.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. And so, talking a little bit about the prediction side, we've now, as you heard me give a little bit of a market update, hit our 6th record week in a row of pending sales off obviously some pretty depressed April activity, like a lot of people in the country. But you've certainly got, and I've enjoyed listening on a weekly basis a lot of times to you and Jack talk and do your guests. You're part of Jack Miller. But you guys certainly have a national perspective as well. And I guess maybe if you wanted to shed a little light for the agent, what are you guys seeing on a national perspective regarding the rebound in real estate sales? We had a conversation a few weeks back about the alphabet soup of recovery and V and U and W and check mark, and now there's a K and there's all kinds of things. But what are you seeing there? And also not necessarily just short term, but what are you seeing longer term? Because the 6 weeks we've had doesn't really shock me, because again, we had an incredibly underlying strong market here in Charleston. We had unemployment in Charleston County down to 1.5%. And so when the lockdown ended and we returned to that underlying strong market, certainly expected strong activity. But what are you seeing longer term as maybe we face a new normal of an economic environment that has higher unemployment and some more challenges?
We're not going to go alphabet soup this morning. No alphabet soup at all. The human race is, as a collective, a fearful group of people. Individually, we are not. Individually, we are visionary, powerful, decisive. We'll take our life in our own hands and do things. But when you put people together as a collective and you start taking a decision on behalf of other people, especially loved ones, people that you care about, people in your community, we take different kind of decisions, and rightfully so, not incorrectly so, but rightfully so. Therefore, every time that you have any disproportionate, huge, global, regional, negative kind of an event, a 9/11, a terrorist attack, a Katrina, a huge storm, a pandemic, a global disease of any kind. So as soon as you have one of those big events, the world or the area or the territory or the town or the country that is affected by that impact tends to shut down very quickly. So Katrina had devastating impact on New Orleans. 9/11 was devastating for the world, but more for America and more for New York than for America as a whole. So it depends where it is geographically. This pandemic hit us nationwide. It hit the world, but I'm talking US. It hit us countrywide. So we shut down reasonably quickly. We can be petty and argue whether certain leaders should have done it a week or two earlier or later, whether they had the knowledge or not. But that's not the point. We went from a fantastic January, a very, 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 very good February, and in many cases, the enthusiasm and the momentum and the energy carried us through in March. So most people had a great March. So we looked at Q1 looking back, and we would say probably one of the best Q1s we've had in the real estate industry for decades. And then, Q2, the bottom fell out. I mean, it's one of the quickest collapses we've ever seen. So April sucked. You're right. It was terrible. It was terrible, right? And in all regards, whether we look at unemployment numbers or death numbers or financial numbers or the stock market, it was disastrous. It was disastrous. So we all knew, common sense said to us, it can only get better. So we all knew that, and there's not a shadow of a doubt that the end of the year is going to be better than April. Probably everything's going to be better than April. The question now has always been is the pain that we've received, is the cut, is it a small cut, is it a big cut, is it a deep cut, did it cut an artery, are we bleeding to death, did we close the wound, are we getting medicine, are we getting our rest? I mean, how are we taking care of the pain which we had? And every industry is reliving or experiencing that recovery differently. So we know that tourism is hurting. We know that many other industries which are dependent on people traffic, like restaurants, is hurting more. We are, but we're somewhere in between. We're not quite isolated. I mean, we're not sitting in an office and put your headset on and write computer code and never talk to anybody. So we're not quite removed from human, but we don't really have that much of human interaction as a restaurant or a hotel or an airline is absolutely 100% dependent on. And we as an industry actually fairly quickly adapted actually fairly well. I mean, look at this call of yours. I mean, 277 people on a call, which you said to me just before we started, you only did once or twice a year, and now you're doing it 26 times a year. And you're not the only one. I mean, so we as an industry have learned to Zoom very quickly. Now the COVID did not create Zoom. COVID did not create DocuSign, but COVID accelerated the use of online signatures. It accelerated the use of video conferencing calls or video chats or remote distant communication. So we had these tools before, but we as an industry get so distracted, right? Squirrel, whoops, and we run on to the next transaction, and then we go into a buyer, and we're almost ADD as an industry. And I know not all of us, I know we have different people, but boy, are we over the board sometimes. So what this pandemic has done to us as an industry, as a collective, it has actually forced us all somewhat to slow down a little bit, stick yourself into a cubicle or office or your bedroom or wherever it is, your kitchen. I don't know how many Zoom calls I've done with people where I can see what kind of microwave you have in the background. But I mean, so you're suddenly stuck, and you had this opportunity to say, I've got to become better at something that I maybe didn't do that often or wasn't that good at or didn't quite know. And we have adapted. Now, the industry hasn't really changed. We're fundamentally still the same. I mean, we'll probably still in 6 months time from now say buyers are liars and sellers are worse. I mean, we'll still say the things we've been saying for decades, but we have accelerated the adoption of various technologies in a much quicker process than we did before. And that has significantly shown us, I think if anything else, shown us that we can change this industry. And some of the diehards in this industry that said, I've been doing real estate this way for 50 years, it's never going to change, might have actually noticed some change in a short period of time fairly quickly. So I am very optimistic that real estate did not get hurt with this pandemic. We were collateral damage. Yes, absolutely. We were in the proximity of where bad things happened, but it was not a direct hit to our industry. We did not get a direct hit. And as a result of that, I think we will stand up and brush ourselves off. And I think we will have a very, very, very decent Q3. And I think, again, unless another wave 2 or something with the presidential election or something with the riots, clearly if things of that magnitude don't get resolved or concluded or something exceptional happens, of course anything can return. But considering that the pandemic is probably over its height, and I know there are some states where the numbers are still keeping up, and I know some people have opened up and we're concerned. I get all of that, but I think the worst is behind us, and I think we can look forward to a better second half than Q2. I don't think we'll catch up what we lost in Q2. We lost too much in April and May, but I don't think that when we look at the year as a whole, we're not going to say, oh, it's 50% or 40% of what it was last year. I think it might be, I don't know, again, predictions are always bad, maybe 10%, maybe 12% as a whole year, and we'll be able to point to a 6-week period and say, there's the guilty week, The guilty few weeks.
So, following up on a couple of things you said about accelerating the adoption of technology and accelerating, kind of playing off that word a little bit, just because I want the agents to benefit from your expertise. In 2015, you published a danger report. Mm-hmm. And the danger report was, I think, commissioned by NAR to kind of look at the threats and risk and challenges that, whether it was brokerages, whether it was agents, whether it was MLSs, whether it was the industry as a whole, kind of faced moving forward. And two of the areas that were at that time, and I was joking looking at that, like I didn't see global pandemic on that list of threats.
Oh, it's in there.
I don't think anyone caught that coming. But on the agent side, you talked about threats to agents on the danger report were both the relevance of agents, their real role in the real estate transaction, as well as kind of what I like to call the Amazon effect, the commoditization of kind of the real estate transaction. And as a company, we've certainly planted our flag into the relationship selling side of this business. Pandemic gives our agents a chance to be even closer in flow with their clients. And that's kind of how we've chosen to do business. But with the pandemic and the need that it socially or physically distances us from one another, are those issues of relevance and commoditization challenges that have continued to accelerate, that are, challenges to our role in this industry, in this transaction, or kind of how do you see that in the midst of kind of our new normal?
I'll start off by saying, Christina, I love your dog. So great having him on the screen as a fill-in when we could quickly popped out. Michael, yes, I don't think for a second that the realtor or the licensed agent or the sales associate or the sales professional is doomed. I have said that in every single publication for the last 52 of them, whatever it is. I don't think that as an industry we are dead, doomed, over. None at all, zero. I do not believe that for a second. What I do, however, believe is that we are fundamentally fragmented on all levels. We do have too many companies. We do have too many brands. We have too many agents. And that is all a symptomatic result of the fact that entrance into real estate is relatively easy. It is one of the easiest professions to get into. And some people dispute that it's a profession, so whether you accept that or not, but it is one of the easiest.
License-wise.
Yes, occupation-wise to get into, license-wise, absolutely. And be within the possibility of earning a six-figure number, maybe even a seven-figure number, relatively quickly as compared to people that may have had to go and study medicine or pharmaceutical or architecture, engineering or aerospace engineering, where you're looking at a decade of study, right? Or at the very, very, very least, a half to 3/4 of a decade. But add in all the articles and licensing requirements, probably a decade. Where you can, in real estate, in some states, you can get away with 40 hours. So to become a licensed agent in 40 hours is actually a sin. I mean, it should not be permitted. It's just not right. So as a result of that, our industry is fragmented, and therefore we have too many people in our industry. Now, we do know that there are many people in our industry that are part-time. They're not in full-time. We know that they come and go. We know that they have other occupation. And unfortunately, their involvement in our industry skews a lot of things. It skews numbers when you look at big companies like the Religys and the Kellers, because now they are what they call either LIFROs or non-licensed agents or part-time agents or even ghost agents, or whatever term that you wanted to use for different companies. But it skews all numbers. And that detracts so much from the quality, the great people in our industry that decided to come to this industry for whatever reason, but let's say because they wanted to, because they're committed, because they're hardworking, because they're smart, because they're diligent. And good agents have differentiated them in our industry by making this big of a difference. We have many agents in our industry, about 25%, that earn so much every year. Zero. And not a good number, right? Not a good number. You cannot make money on zero. But then we have the opposite side. So when we look at the model which is being attacked, many of the outsiders that look at our space, they look at the weak performers. They look at the low performers and say, oh, we can do better than that. Of course you can. Everybody can do better than zero. I mean, that's not hard. So the attack is often at the masses and it is to try and say, can we improve them? Can we remove them? Can we disintermediate them? Can we commoditize them? Can we automate them? Can we do something with them because they're not being productive? However, many of those models actually use good agents to do exactly that. So it isn't really that the agent is being removed. I think there is a little bit of a cleansing going on where the better agent, the educated agent, the dedicated agent, the ethical agent, the focused agent, the hardworking agent, the agent that does the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 transactions a year, which is, they're really serious about their business, right? And he or she is not the person who's under threat here. So if that's your team, which I think it probably is, if that's your team, the agent that does, on average, again, 15, 20 transactions on average per agent in a company is good. It's very good. The big national chains, which are great companies, don't get me wrong for a second, don't interpret it different, but these are good chains. If you look at any one of the chains, doesn't matter if you look at Berkshire or Realogy or Keller, or if you look within Realogy, meaning the Cobble Bank and Century 21 and Better Homes and Gardens Sellers, if you look at any of those, or the big independents, the John L. Scott, the Baird and Warners, the Long and Fosters, the Wyckoffs, if you look at any of those big chains, 6, 7, 8, 9 transaction sides per agent is the norm. But it is because those numbers get watered down because you're dividing by a big number. There are many part-time agents there which are skewed. When you start looking at a smaller number, meaning a more homogeneous group, a more defined group, a more clearer group, a more family-oriented group, you tend to see those numbers sort of almost double. You see in the Windermere's and the Howard Hanna's, which are little tighter groups, you tend to see more 12s and 13s and 14s on an average. I'm not talking about the best performers. I've seen best performer numbers, anything from 100. I saw one guy the other day, over 1,000 transactions a year. Wow. But it depends what, of course, you include and how big the team is and how many assistants they have. So we have screwed around with the definition of who's an agent and who's a team and who's a what. They all look funny. Commoditization, I think, is the process of introducing new technologies, new systems, whether that is in some regard Opendoor, OfferPad, some elements of Zillow, some elements maybe of EXP, some elements of Redfin, where you can take one process of a real estate transaction and say, I'm going to try and streamline that. I'm going to try and improve that. I'm going to try and bundle these two together. I'm going to put a computer on top of this or plug it into it. I'm going to put it on a platform. I'm going to, automate it to some extent. I think that is the beginning of commoditization of our transaction. I don't think it's actually the agent being commoditized. I think it's the process. And I think some of the pieces of the process can absolutely be improved. Some pieces can absolutely be automated. And then there is all that remaining belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball consumer, I love you, you trust me, I live in the same neighborhood kind of stuff, which is very, very, very hard to take away from a well-trusted advisor who is in my neighborhood and think that an algorithm can do all of it. An algorithm can clearly do some of it. We know where Zestimates were 11 years ago. We know where they are today, right? They have improved. And they tend to work reasonably well in a neighborhood where there are more tract homes, there's more uniformity, the properties look more the same. When you get to high-end or low-end or unique properties, it tends to not work that well. But that's just how life functions. So I think realtors are safe. I do not think we have to worry about commoditization, but understand that pieces of what you do can be improved. You being the good agent, I think, will improve it. If you don't, you'll be replaced by an agent who will do it better than you will, not by a computer.
And, we've seen, I appreciate that. And we've seen a lot of change in the industry over the last 5-10 years. There was a presentation I heard of yours that obviously you can't cover in a 5-minute answer, because I think it was probably a 90-minute presentation about some of the industry change that really has always been going on. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's technology or Facebook or the speed of communication, because it seems like, the disruptor word and new models, and every other day there's a new business opening up around the corner that may last a couple of months, and a new model here and a new model there. Seems like that's really accelerated. But, during that talk that I had, you really talked about that change really has always existed in our industry, but we certainly have seen people dumping a lot more money into real estate over the last half dozen years. And I didn't know if, it made sense for you to kind of just address that kind of global picture, because we are a relatively immature industry. Even though our company's been around for 53 years, real estate as an industry and the consolidation over the last 30 years is a relatively immature business.
It's fascinating to see where we all come from, right? What is our DNA? Why are we as humans, you, me, us, why are we what we are in all regards, physical, emotionally, mentally, and all of the other aspects? So therefore, the same applies for me to real estate. Why does NAR exist? Why does Realogy exist? Why do we have technology? Where did the internet come from insofar as it impacts our industry? So we did go, yes, and can't do it in 5 minutes, couldn't do it in 90 minutes. I have spent maybe 3,000 hours to research our industry back to 1850. I try to read every single thing I could about every single company of substance and MLS and associations all the way back to Lewis and Clark days. I mean, as far as I could go back, I did it. And then I started putting everything together, and I try to put it into tables and graphs and charts, and I try to make sense of it. How did things fit together? And yes, according to our very high level, I'll try and keep it into the 2-3 minute range.
We can have 7.
We believe that we are now in stage 9, and the number doesn't matter. It's just that there are 9 repeatable stages or cycles that we've been in since around about 1850. I'm not referring to mortgage or presidential or economic or global, but our business, the residential real estate brokerage industry, our business. And we've had phases such as the franchising phase, meaning that there was a date where there was not one franchise in the entire country. Somebody introduced it, industry fell in love with it, it went bazinga, crazy, lots of people used it, and it became not the norm, but it became a widely used concept. There was a day in which there was no 100% concept, no Remax, right? Was introduced, same path. There was a time which we did not do mergers and acquisition. There was a time which we did not have public companies involved. There was a time which we did not have portals like Zillow. So there are pre-dates, and then there are dates which those companies came into our industry, and they had some kind of an impact, and they had a cycle, a life. And that cycle from birth of a concept to not accepting, hating, fighting, launching, growing, going mainstream, getting critical mass, becoming big, most likely going IPO or doing something of a significant financial exit strategy to where we are today is usually somewhere between 14 to 16 years. It seems to come around at a fairly frequent interval. And I don't think that that is pre-planned. I think it is simply that the one cycle has to run its course. It has to sort of peter out. If your kid is born, it has to graduate to high school before the next kid comes into school kind of stuff. There seems to be a sort of a school-long kind of cycle. We are now in cycle number 9, which started approximately, according to our best calculation, around about 2012, give or take 12 months. It doesn't really matter. And at that time, companies such as the Redfins, the EXPs, the Knox, the Open Doors, the Compasses, the OfferPads, those kind of companies which were considered at that time the new wave, the new business model. And again, we've had a new business model wave 10 times before, right? But at this time of new business model, they came in and they said, we are going to re-engineer the real estate transaction process company business by doing something. Now, we know that some of those models are only a little bit different from our model. Some of them did not do a lot. I mean, you all use technology, so EXP from that point of view is not new. But Amazon sold things just like Nordstrom's or Macy did, but the difference was Amazon was almost exclusively or predominantly online with a few warehouses. Macy's and Nordstrom had lots of shops and shop fronts with maybe 1 or 2 warehouses. So they basically flipped the model. The same would be with EXP. The traditional real estate company has lots of offices and has a website. EXP is fundamentally a website, an online business with maybe an office or 2. So it's like the Amazon Nordstrom flip. The same is with OfferPad, the same is with Compass. They took the element which that leader at that time thought was important or critical or unique or special and pushed that to the front and said, this is why my business or company is special. They did that at a time where there was disproportionate amount of money floating around with investors looking for investment opportunities. they were chasing the Ubers and the Slacks and the eBays and the Yahoos. Well, not anymore, but they were chasing the Airbnb and the Snapchats and the WeChats kind of companies, even the Tesla and the SpaceX kind of companies. They were looking for companies to invest money in. There was too much liquidity in the market. At one stage, they popped into real estate and said, where do we put our money? A traditional company doesn't look exciting because it's doing the same thing it's done for 50 years. So they looked towards new people, which were not in the industry, who said, I have a dream, I have an idea, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do it this way. So those companies, many of those companies got a disproportionate amount of capital injection in a very short period of time. And I'm talking in the hundreds of millions, and in 3 or 4 cases, they actually got more than $1 billion. So that's a lot of money, right? $1 billion is what is that? 7, 8, 9, 10 zeros. I mean, a 1 with 9 zeros, so 10 numbers. It's a big number, guys. Many of those companies have interesting models. Many of their models have not been proven. Many of their models will not stand the test of time. But many of their models will, just because of the capital injection of funds and energy, survive. And they will make a difference. And I think that what COVID's done is COVID has accelerated the current curve. Our current curve was estimated to go roughly from 2012 to 2026. We think that the interruption of COVID for 6 or 8 weeks has maybe taken off 2 or 3 years of that curve, meaning that it has actually paused the outside investors. So if you look at the money which was invested last year in our industry, it was $3.346 billion. $3.3 billion came in from outside and was given to a handful of companies. In total, maybe 100, but 80% went to 4 companies. So those companies got the money. I don't think that this year we're going to hit 2 billion. I think we're going to be down in between the 1.5 to 1.8 billion range. So still a lot of money, but a 50% drop. As you said, your company had 6 record weeks. This will be the first drop from outside funding coming into our industry in 5 years. We've had 5 years of like this growth. So I think funding is coming to a rapid end. Therefore, new models being identified will not get money, which means new models have come to a rapid end, which means that the money coming in will most likely go to the existing companies where money has already been invested, where somebody has something to lose. So if you've already put money behind OfferPad, Opendoor, just using 2 placeholders, I'm not promoting any company, they're just statistics for me. If you've already put money into it, if they need money again, you'll put money again because you don't want to lose what you've already invested, right? You're holding on to it. So I do think that the ones which are in the industry at the moment will probably be the winners of what we call stage 9. So every winner has stage winners. When franchising came in 72, and it grew very much in the 70s, the winners of the 1970 franchise stage, which was stage 6, was Century 21, ERA, right? Those are the winners, which means they were the ones which benefited the most from that new model at that time and grew the most. You might say, well, Century 21 is not that big anymore. No, they're not the biggest, but they are still one of the big companies around there, and they are still a top 10 company in all regards. The next stage with the 100% concept, the beneficiary of that was RE/MAX. They are still around. So you can look at every stage and you can find usually 1, 2, 3 winners that were able to capitalize quickly enough, maximize quickly enough, grow quickly enough, get a critical mass, and build a national brand. And they've remained dominant. Realogy has proven that, Keller Williams has proven that, Century 21 has proven that, Sotheby's has proven that. So I think that we are going to say that the winners of stage 9, the beneficiaries of that, most likely already exist today. And it will most likely be a Compass, Opendoor, Redfin, EXP are the 4 most likely winners to survive. That doesn't mean the other companies will go away. It means that they probably will be acquired or merged into each other, maybe consolidate. Will probably be the outcome.
And a lot of those brands aren't even in our market. So, kind of my question, kind of to bring it back to some of the things that we do philosophically, isn't just to give everybody a history lesson, but I think that is important because we've got to look as an industry kind of where we've been to how we're going. And the new models and the innovations in the industry make us better. We had a fundamentally different commission plan 15 years ago than we have now. And we've seen that over the last 45 years. So it's important to continue to adapt and grow and change and be responsive as to how we do that. But I guess my question to you when we talk about all those things that tie together, which is the relevance of the agent in the transaction, the commoditization of real estate, and then you look at someone like Compass, and I'm sure you saw Mike Del Prete, who's an economist, report a few weeks back that talked about after spending nearly $1 billion or some odd dollars on technology, the Compass agents per person productivity, the number of deals they're doing on an annual basis isn't any different than the industry. So while a lot of technology, and I just kind of give you this to you generally to comment on, while a lot of technology is going to help us in how we do things, it's certainly not going to replace the agent. And it seems like that one common factor, regardless of how you slice it, is going to be that agent's relationship with their client. And, being that, as you talked about before, that local expert as to how you would go out and pick an agent. That's obviously separate from maybe the iBuyers who aren't in our market yet either.
As I said, full confidence that a good quality agent that provides an ethical, professional, dedicated service and knows his market, there will be room and place for you in spades forever. You have a wonderful place where you are today, stay where you are. But at the end of the day, you will be in demand one day because there will be many companies that will want you. I have no concern about you. I think the stats which you referred to by the other person in the industry requires some interpretation a little bit more. When companies spend a lot of money, Keller's been spending a lot of money, Realogy has spent a lot of money when they acquired Zip Realty, and Keller Williams is building, the KW Kelly platform and the cloud. EXP bought Verbella. Remax has bought Bouge and First IO, and Compass is building its own stuff. So there are many examples. He's looking at one, but there are many examples of technology acquisitions or spent, and they are all in the multi millions. I'm not sure they've spent more than $1 billion, Compass, but maybe not the point. The point is, building it and saying that they will come is not true in real estate. Right? This is not a baseball game where you build a stadium and everybody wants to play there. In our industry, when a leader stands up and says, listen, here's the dream, let's move forward, half the industry is asleep. Half the industry is not listening. Half the industry doesn't care. Half the industry says, screw you, I'm going to do my own thing. Right? So it is very seldom that we as an industry or we as a company, especially when these companies get big. I mean, whichever way you want to slice Remax, 100,000 people. Whichever way you want to slice Keller Williams, globally or internationally, probably 180,000 people. Whichever way you want to slice Realogy with all their brands internationally and here, 250,000 people. So these are enormously big organizations, and they are in countries, in states, in regional franchises, in offices, and then agents. So we have this independently owned and operated cascading boom, 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 boom. So when a corporate company says, I have spent X number of millions of dollars of building a platform, it doesn't mean that the agents are going to use it tomorrow. It literally takes years of training and asking and begging and trying and practicing and getting them up to using it. So if you want to get to even half, 50% adoption rate, it could take years. So the fact that anybody has built or spent money on technology does not mean that technology doesn't work. It means the agents are not using it yet. When it does one day click into place, whether it maybe takes another generation of a younger generation of agent coming into Compass or coming into Realogy or coming into Keller and starting to use it from day one because they don't know of anything better, then it'll quickly happen. If you look at Netflix growth, if you look at Amazon's growth, if you look at Facebook's growth, it was not overnight. The adoption of technology takes a half a decade to a decade. It'll take a long time. So coming up with stats at the moment with those numbers, I think are not quite accurate. I think they're a little misleading.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. I was reading where you had said that the real estate transaction is complicated, fragmented, sophisticated, disorganized, and illogical all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes the key. And what we focused on as a company, obviously, is allowing that technology to help you automate the things that are not the highest and best use of an agent's time, automating your flow contacts, staying in touch with your people so that an agent's time, spent on the productive things, which is, as you said earlier, nose to nose and belly to belly with their clients, because that's really how the decisions get made at the end of the day. Regardless of people searching for real estate at the end of the day, regardless of where they search, regardless of what they do, when they want to go see that house or make that decision or have that consultation for the future of their family, they're really going to end up calling that person they're most comfortable with and is in flow with them. And that's why we've been pretty excited about the progress that we've made, focusing on those clients.
So I'll use that information you gave us and draw to a comparison, which I know some people have used a lot, where they've said, well, Uber displaced yellow cabs. So yellow cabs are dead. And therefore, if we say that a new model is going to replace realtors and realtors are yellow cabs, then we're dead. Not true, not true. There is still somebody driving you from point A to point B. There is still somebody, which is that belly-belly relationship. Yes, maybe the old domain structure of a branded yellow cab driver is not appropriate, but many of the good quality drivers of yellow cabs have now actually become Uber drivers or Lyft drivers. And you now actually see the same person, just in a different vehicle in a different time. And in some cases, unfortunately, Uber has not become as bad as a yellow cab driver because it's the same driver that's driving on the other side now. But what has made the driving experience of Uber in many cases more pleasurable than the traditional yellow cab experience was the fact that technology was introduced to allow me to get a driver quickly or find out where my ride is, to prepay for him through a credit card, to be able to reclaim. So it's added an extra layer. If we as an industry fight against Uber, if we fight against technology, then Uber might come into our industry, and I don't mean Uber per se, but a new business model, and replace us. But if we just learn and do what Uber did to yellow cab and say, well, why can't we introduce technology into real estate? Why can't you, and I'm sure you already have, but why can't traditional real estate companies adopt those innovations? You just said that you as a company have grown in 52 or 45 years because you've changed. Well, that's what good leaders does, Michael. That's exactly what leaders do. You look at what all the other companies do. You look at iBuyer, you look at virtual, you look at commission packages, you look at structures, and you say, I like that part, I like that part, this part works, this part works. I'm going to introduce it into my company, and I'm going to take my company wherever you are and take it to the next level. Then you're a winner. That's the way to do it.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to take that same analogy a little bit further and change it slightly, no doubt, Uber made a better experience and took all of those pain points and pinch points and helped smooth some of them out on what your decision on a $20 ride, but I also, we've talked about this example before, is if you look at, for example, the disintermediation, the disruptor of the dock in the box, there's a dock in the box on every corner, they're going to have signs saying we waive your copay or $25 copay. And if I cut my finger today and I need stitches, I'm going to go to the nearest dock in the box. And if there's two across the street from each other, and one waives the copay and one doesn't, I'll probably go in the one that's cheaper because I'm assuming they're at base minimally competent to give me 4 stitches, patch up my hand, and I'll be on my way. And I won't know the doctor's name. The exam and the procedure will start and end in exam room 3. And I may or may not ever go back to that individual place depending on how the experience is. But they've also got to spend that money to drive their customer, to show them what they're doing. And again, they've got to compete on price, just like Uber and Lyft. And they've got to go through that, even though they disrupted the emergency room or the other thing. Compare and contrast that to last week I had my annual physical. And my primary care physician's office has been full for the last 2 decades. They only take patients by referral. The exam is with my doctor and ends not in exam room 3, but in his office. He knows my wife's name. He treats my father and my mother. He knows my father's history for the last 40 years and treats me accordingly. We have that relationship. And you know what? I don't know what he charges. I'm not tempted to go across the street to somebody else because it's a little bit cheaper. Of course, they've got to provide all of the technology supports like electronic records, and I can now do my appointment online, and I can pay my bill, and I can check prescriptions, and I can get refilled digitally. And they've got to continue to elevate, but that relationship is still key to that family physician's business. And when we look in real estate, somebody had on the comments that, and Stefan talked early on about how easy the barrier of entry is in this business. He's absolutely right. NAR stats say if you get your license today, 82% of people are out of the business in 5 years. That does us no benefit as an industry. and no benefit in our perception to the public. But if we focus on those relationships and we use technology to deliver a superior experience and focus on those things that are the highest and best use of our time, then obviously, going through a little bit of this history of some of the new things that are out there and some of the challenges that the different things present really allow us the opportunity to excel in an industry where we get to help people with their primary need of housing, which not only can be a profitable business, not only can build a great career, but really is so exciting. We've already talked about the net worth of a homeowner being 40 times greater than that of a renter. We get to have a part in that. The last thing I'll say before I thank our guest and we wrap up, because we're a few minutes over, is, I did send out a memo about some of the protest issues, the George Floyd issues, and some of those things. And I wanted to briefly comment on it, although I've got some other things upcoming as a company on our next town hall, which is going to be June 30th in 2 weeks, that'll spend a little bit more time on that. But it is important to realize, like I said, the net worth of a homeowner is that much greater than that of a renter. And what we need to look at is say, as an industry, where can we make sure that we're doing our part to address some of the generational and long-lasting issues that have had and created the separation in white homeownership and African-American homeownership. There shouldn't be a difference. And so, the new down payment assistance program that's come out, that's expanded to a whole new group of people. You need to be familiar with that. We need to make sure we're educating our clients and helping everybody look at the privileges and opportunities that home ownership can create. And that has nothing to do with selling more houses. It has to do with, over the long term, helping everybody equally and fairly see the benefits of those opportunities. And that's, again, this is what we do. So that's kind of one of the areas we can focus in, separate and above our everyday lives. So we're going to come back to that and address more things on that on an ongoing basis. Stefan, anything else you want to say? And I want to thank you for giving us your time, sharing your expertise with the company, and for everything you do in the industry.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the invite. No problem to spend time with you guys. Gladly do it again. I hope you have a wonderful time and hit a home run over the summer. Hit a home run, all of you. Double your
We
sign.
appreciate it. And maybe we'll check back in this fall and we'll go from there. But thanks for being here. I'll send out an email. I'm going to see everybody in 2 weeks on Tuesday, June 30th for our next town hall. So
take care, everyone.
Thank you for being here. We're off next week, and I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. On this hand. Can't get used to the screen being flip side. Bye.